You will be lovingly inspired to your own sacred remembering in this interview with Sarah Poet, a cutting-edge regenerative feminine leader. Honor yourself, celebrate your strength, empower your transformation with your Yin-care. This is the Yin-care podcast, and I'm your host, Margaret Jacobson, the Mother Rising. Welcome, everyone, to the Yin-care podcast. I am Margaret Jacobson, and I am the Mother Rising with Yin-care. And today I have a really great guest to introduce you to. Her name is Sarah Poet, and she's amazing. She has a really exciting program that she's going to introduce to us today. Sarah Poet is a truth seeker, thought leader, a former school creator turned feminine masculine integration expert, and a medicine woman for modern times. It is Sarah's mission to serve the true evolution of human consciousness, to integrate feminine and masculine on all levels, and to bridge us collectively from separation to connection. Sarah helps couples, individuals, and organizations heal the separation traumas inflicted by patriarchal culture and come into deeper connection via integrity, embodied intimacy, resiliency, authenticity, and love. Sarah will go with you to the depths, responding exactly to your unique path of core query and to uncover your deepest and most empowering truths. And so without further ado, everyone, let me introduce to you Sarah Poet. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Margaret. Hello, everyone. Good to be here.
So happy that you could make it today. This is awesome. So excited that we got to meet through the womb container, through the Earth Star Academy, which has been a wonderful healing container that we've both been partaking in. So anyway, Sarah, one of the things that you are really passionate about that you are sharing with me is the sacred remembrance. I do want to get into that, but after I was looking over your website and we were chatting, it would be great if people could get to know you a little better. If you would mind sharing your path and how the sacred remembering came to you.
Thanks so much. I'm such a storyteller that sometimes I have to be like, okay, I'm going to rein it in because there's so much story on the path of being a woman and awakening to the truth of who we are. It just doesn't stop. We're just on this journey all the time. Sacred remembering to me is really about that journey. Like I say, waking up to the truth of who we are, standing in that truth, and then allowing our lives and our prosperity to align to the real truth of who we are rather than who we were conditioned to be.
Right. Exactly.
I think every woman, probably every person can relate to that kind of thing. But I guess highlights that really shaped the beginning of my story was that I grew up in a religious family that was like, I had a father who had a lot of dominator tendencies linked to religion.
Right.
And so I will say too, that Sacred Remembering is a podcast. It's a live community, like it's a verb, like we're doing it together.
Right.
Oftentimes on that path, there's some religious trauma. There's like this condition that we've lived as women that what is supposedly God is also masculine and dominating.
Right.
And so I definitely had that experience as a child, both with the father and the church, and thinking that the sacred and what was holy belonged to my father. I was made to go to church as a child, became a very, very rebellious young teenager. I mean, I had a lot to rebel against. And I remember sitting in the pews looking through the Bible to try to find evidence of how they talked about women and the earth. It was always in there. I also want to say this. I had so much to rebel against, but there was also so much that was unspoken that my intuition and my body knew.
Right.
When I tried to speak out about like, I think that I was abused sexually around the age of 16, I was told, no, you weren't. Don't be silly.
Right.
And so what I say is I spent about 15 years trying to not be silly.
Right.
because that was just ridiculous. Of
Right.
course, that didn't happen. Keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
And so, maybe it was that rebellion. Maybe it was my own sacred spirit. Maybe I was in love. That was true. Maybe it was because of sexual abuse and hypersexuality, but I became pregnant
Right.
at 18. I was living probably 10 hours from home, got pregnant in my first semester of college. My first thought was absolutely no one can know about this.
Right.
And then pretty soon afterwards, I was like, this being's got to come through. She's got
Wow.
to be here.
Wow.
I was a freshman in my solo dorm room. And I
Oh my God.
remember
So intense. I can't even imagine.
10 hours from home, I had to tell my super controlling parents about it over the phone. And I was like, and so the very first thing that I did actually was just, I got sacred with myself. Like
Mm.
I had piercings all over the place and I took them all out.
Wow.
And I just was like, okay, I'm going to do this all like to the best of my ability, which felt very natural to me.
Mhm.
Adoption was like the pathway that was put in front of me,
Okay.
and I pretty much like knew that that had to happen. And I was put into the basement of my family home, which
God.
I've done a lot of therapy on.
Oh my
Like
God.
this is all in memoir, to be published one day. But my bedroom had been given away. So I was put in the basement, which is such a metaphor. They put a twin bed in our playroom from our childhood. And I was like, where would the baby go? This is also a story of separation because I really did love her father, but I was also then convinced that he was a dangerous man and that he would never provide for me or the child and we would be destitute forever. There was no way that I could provide for this child. That was ingrained. There was just no way that
Right.
I could do it. And so I did choose her parents and she was adopted. It is an open adoption, so I've known her.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it was all really by the grace of God, the sacred, that this all happened. It was on the path of the soul. And then I'll say that it was all very blessed because the things that I actually learned about my family and the
Mhm.
intergenerational trauma in my family later in life on my discovery path, I know that my daughter was very much protected by being adopted.
Wow.
And
Yes,
so,
absolutely, right?
you know, yeah, absolutely. So I will say that. So sacred remembering, I mean, after that and losing her, I shut down so many parts of my sexuality because that had gotten me in that situation. I
Wow.
shut down creativity. I shut down life work. I mean, I lost my daughter, like
Yeah.
this beautiful 9-pound baby girl.
Wow.
And I
Oh,
lost my
I
love.
can
And the path that I was given was you have to go make something of yourself.
Mhm.
You have to go succeed and
Mhm.
prove that you can do it and prove that you can have money and marriage. And you have to do it all
Right,
in that right
right,
order before you're worthy of motherhood. So I
right.
just tried like hell to be worthy of being a mother. I got a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree. And I did get pregnant with my son and I married my high school best friend and
Sorry, repeat
we
that one more time because it just broke up a little bit. You married your
uh-huh.
who?
My best friend from high
Oh,
school
okay.
who, was like a very safe bet
Right.
at
Mhm.
that point. And we had our son and were married for about 4 years. We were together for a total of 14, and then we were married for 4 years. Sometimes I call the sacred remembering moment the moment of awakening when a woman is like, wait, I totally left a part of myself way back there.
Totally.
I remember this day where my son was a toddler and we were outside, the clouds parted and the sun hit my face. And I remembered the embodied feeling that I had had with my daughter's father,
Uh-huh.
who I hadn't spoken to since I was 5 months pregnant.
Wow.
I remembered being young and passionate about life and what I
Yeah.
cared about. That force of nature, the real feminine, was just so subdued
Yeah.
upon losing my daughter. And I was like, I'm going to walk back to that. I'm going to walk back to
Wow.
that person. And I would say that that's like the first part of my sacred remembering journey. So from
Right.
there, I ended up divorcing and leaving my education career. I was a really established school principal in holistic
Wow.
education. I had built up the resume and I began walking out of
Yeah.
that life and toward myself. And then it was like holy path of discovery. Who we are is so much bigger than we ever know. This is what I say all the time about sacred
Yeah.
remembering and why it's so important for women to follow those pings, those like
Yeah.
internal, I think I'm supposed to go after this. It's like,
Right.
oh, you got no idea how ancient your soul is. You have
Right.
no idea how much wisdom is inside of you.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
like keep going. And so I would like follow a breadcrumb. I
Hmm.
remember when I was still in education, I started to do energy training. Like,
Right.
what does this look like? If I started taking Reiki classes. And then years down the road, I was doing things in energy sessions that no one had ever taught me. It
Yeah.
was like
Yeah.
coming from somewhere else.
Yeah. I've had that too.
Like I learned it in a past life, literally. And then it's like, if I'm going to admit that I learned that in a past life, then who was I in a past life? And
Right.
then
Right.
it was,
Right.
oh, I know these really amazing things from other times, other spaces. And that's how this divine remembrance of unity architecture and all of these things started to be the thing that I just couldn't stop
Yeah.
learning about.
Yeah.
It was the thing I had to
Totally.
go toward.
I
And
have
that's
a
how
question.
sacred remembering feels.
That's awesome. I have
Yeah.
a couple of questions. When you came into that kind of moment, was there anything you were doing in your life that was starting to wake you up? Was there a book you were reading? I'm just curious because
Yeah.
I'm going to share with you my sacred remembering moment. I think now I'm like, oh, I had that, you know?
Yeah. So I had a lot of residual trauma in my body. I was waking up to the level of anxiousness that was inside of
Yes,
me that
totally.
was just not okay. But I had been functioning with that for
Uh-huh.
so long. I was always kind of cognitive as an academic. I was looking at books about mindfulness and meditation.
Mhm.
And I worked in therapeutic education. So I was starting to wonder about bringing that to children as well.
Right.
And then we also moved to a house in the woods. I
Mm.
was in the woods every day with my
Mhm.
child when I got home from work and just like watching his pure joy and discovery. And like it felt so good to be in the woods. And then I started running and rediscovering my body. This being like Yin-care and, what you all do with acupuncture. Another really huge thing that was happening was that every time I was sleeping with my husband, I felt like I was being so depleted and I could not
Yeah.
figure out where that was coming from. It was like sucking my life force.
Yeah.
And I was like, is this my kidneys or is this something else weird? And so it was like things just aren't right. And I was getting sicker with adrenal
Yeah.
fatigue, and doctors couldn't figure that out. And it was very much my acupuncturist who was probably like 5 to 7 years older than me as a woman.
Mhm.
And she had
Mhm.
walked that path. And so she
Right.
was starting to talk to me about
Right.
some of those things.
I was just thinking when you were sharing your moment, I had been reading this book that had been recommended to me. It's a channeled writing called Fear No Evil. And
Mm,
a friend and I were reading it together. They don't really call it the shadow selves, but they talk about these layers of masks that we have.
mm, yeah.
As I was coming into a greater awareness around these masks, I started to be able to pull apart my own embodied traumas that were there. And so one of the things that I noticed was this anxiousness with my ex-husband. Every time he'd come home, I was at like, freaking out, like, oh my God, do I have beer in the refrigerator? Do I, are the kids organized and clean? Is dinner prepped? Have I done all the things? And I knew that that was wrong. I just knew that that was super wrong, So there is kind of a little bit of a light bulb moment, right?
And then they continue.
Exactly. So now there's so many things I want to talk about, but would you go into what you've been recently exploring about resources? Because
Mhm.
that kind of goes down this path of following the breadcrumbs a little bit. Once you've had that initial moment of sacred remembering, tell us about your perspective on resources, because I find it incredibly unique.
Thank you. Yeah, this is some of the more recent, like 2, 3 years, things that is coming through. I'm so glad that we're having this conversation right now because I think that we are seeing on the planet like a lot of women waking up saying, okay, I'm going to quit the rat race. I'm going to quit listening to a boss that doesn't understand my feminine system. I want to rebalance feminine masculine. I want to discover this, harness it, live it, and I want to bring my own business and offerings forward. And that's this ideal. And so I lived that kind of ideal. And I will also call it a soul path because it was a massive path of discovery. And so for 5 years, I had an LLC about feminine and masculine rebalancing. And I was just so gung ho.
Right.
It's like, I had left an established career and I'm a single mother. And I was like, I'm going to figure out how to do this. And something that was happening inside of me was like, I was not allowed to do anything patriarchal. When I tried to take on, a pushy masculine essence or something like that, it just wouldn't work. Like it was like this divine plan was like, you're going to figure out a way to do it differently.
Right.
And that was not easy. That's my point in saying that history is that it wasn't all like, I figured it out and now I'm free and everything's working out wonderfully. There was still this weirdness that, I was giving it my all and I still wasn't winning. It was still really hard. And then being on a feminine masculine integration path, I was always looking for this partnership and opportunities for partnership. It was sort of like this idyllic, how are we doing this masculine feminine reclamation consciously together sort of thing. And so I went through a few relationships where I was astonished. I found a couple of soulmates, and there's like not just one, like we find the next person on the path to learn the next lesson.
Right. Sure.
And so I was getting into these like relationships that seemed to be like very promising, very conscious.
Right.
And then it would leave me high and dry. I was like, okay, over and over, like 3 significant times in a row, my resources as a woman were so much more depleted after I got out of these relationships.
Right. Wow. Interesting.
Like my energy was lower. I felt like something had been taken from me because I had shared my body with them. I had shared my time with them, my home. I had introduced my child to them. And it was like, what am I doing wrong? I'm a conscious, well-educated woman. Why is this happening? And so there was some kind of like, I'll call it an inversion, like if I'm on the right path, things should be more abundant.
Right.
Rather than less abundant.
Right.
So what's going on here? So a couple of things that are going on. One, so if we have feminine and masculine energetics, like society, I'm going to speak very generally here for a couple of points.
Sure.
Society has really valued masculine energy and economically, we rely on a lot of masculine energy, like a lot of doing, a lot of producing, a lot of
Right.
getting it done.
Right.
And we link that to economic values. So that's what we value in the workplace and this incessant productivity.
Yeah.
And as women get in that train, we feel super depleted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, well, what is the feminine energy? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what, this thing that I've been consciously reclaiming and bringing back, it was like, oh, the world expects this of me. The world expects, or these men expected to receive these gorgeous feminine energies that I'd been reclaiming, but it still wasn't valued. So I was investing my feminine heart, my
Right.
feminine energy, my
Right.
attention, my
Right.
love, but it wasn't really being valued. And then I started to look at, well, this isn't valued relationally and it's not valued economically. So then it was like, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
I started looking at, and this is the way I break it down. I have a really good friend who's like, I don't think you should say inner and outer because it's not just black or white, either or. Explaining or conceptualizing
Right.
this,
Exactly.
let's just break it down. So I have this working theory that
Mm-hmm.
women have 8 categories of resources.
Okay.
Okay. It's internal resources. So let's see if I can remember all 8. These are the things that are inherent to us.
Yeah. You don't
It's
even
like,
have, if you don't remember them, no big deal. Even a handful, I'm sure
yeah,
we'll
okay.
all kind of know what you're talking about.
So just think about it. As a woman, like, what do I have available to me? I wake up in the morning and I have my attention. I have my time. What am I going to do with my day? I have like the life force energy that I've cultivated. So we're all trying to be healthy and take our
Right.
supplements and get our acupuncture and bolster
Right.
our life force. So,
Right.
like, what are we investing that life force in? Right.
Right.
Then there's what I care about, like my
Mhm.
emotional energy, my nurturance, my mothering. Where am I putting that? Where am I investing my resources? And then there is my body's energy, including my sexual energy. So
Mhm.
my vagina is a huge portal of possibility and energy and creation potential.
Absolutely.
And like, what is getting that? That is not something to be given away. And then I would say to my love, like my heart.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if that was all 8, but those are these innate resources that we have as women.
Yeah.
And so I have a couple of things that I've made for women. One is called structure and flow, where it's like, if these are your resources,
Mhm.
and you have goals about what you want to create in the world, where are you investing your resources
Mhm.
so that your
Yeah.
creations, your dreams, your
Absolutely.
entrepreneurial endeavors, like
Yeah.
whatever, come to life? And so, what women find that I work with is that it's like, oh, I'm giving emotional attention to XYZ before I'm giving it to my ABC.
Mhm.
And so when we start to repattern that
Yeah.
and align that with our actual intentions and our actual desires for
Yeah.
creation, like our own heart's desire for
Yeah.
what we want to create, then we start like, I don't know if funneling is a word I
Yeah.
like, but like we start like putting that feminine life force into the areas that we want to
Yeah.
amplify rather than just
Yeah.
giving it away
Yeah.
because that is what we were conditioned to do.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Like caring and nurturing and
Yeah.
mothering.
So I just
Yeah.
had my oldest son passed through. He's moving all the way, actually, he's moving to Maryland. So he's
Okay.
went from West Coast all the way to East Coast and was passing through Wyoming, right? So he was here, my husband was here, my daughter, but they were all, and my daughter's been here all summer. My husband is here for like 2 weeks and then he's gone for 2 weeks. But with everybody here and all of these things, Yin-care about to launch, and we have a potato farm and some other things going on. It was like there was so much caring that was being put out from me that I, you know, we oftentimes don't give ourselves that moment when everything is finally calmed down. And so everybody left and it was dead silent, just me and the cat again. It's like a blessing and a curse. All of the things that you love, which is why I wanted to give so much love and so much caring and attention to these beloved people in my life that are so worthy of that. I knew it was a fleeting moment. But when they left, it was like, oh, right. Now I got to fill the tank back up again. And it took about a day and a half to 2 days where I was really focusing attention on myself, allowing myself to do the things that I needed to do to just regroup from that. And it's very irrational in the sense that our current culture doesn't value that. I don't believe, at least I'm not seeing women like you and many others and myself are starting to make these changes and taking that time and attention. There is a level of a switch being flipped in a sense, but it's still, there's a mental component to it where I'm partly beating myself up sometimes still about it. You know what I mean? Like in the background, like, am I really taking a long time to take care of myself? Is this too long? It's not about measuring the time. It's knowing when you're full, knowing when you're done, you know?
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That brings up a few things. Like, I hear that while your family was there, you were consciously like, I want to give it all I've got. And maybe you even knew that you were going to be tired afterwards, but you were like, doesn't matter because I'm going to give it all I've got. And there was a joy in that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm seeing you smile at having everyone
Totally.
home and And so that piece that you're bringing up around needing to recover afterward, it's like there's light and shadow in that I just want to pull out. Yes, awesome that we are giving ourselves that as women. What if women didn't have to recover from overgiving
Right.
or spreading our resources too thin?
Yeah.
That's kind of the next phase of this conversation. And I do want to invite everyone. I just made a free ebook about this. It's 22 pages and it's at sarahpoet.com. And it's all about these resources. And that'll just be on the homepage at sarahpoet.com by the time this airs. And so the next part of that conversation is really, what am I investing in? What do I hope to receive from it? Or am I okay with, kind of dipping into my reserves?
Yeah.
Or would I like to experience more?
Right.
And this, a few years ago, this is sort of a sacred remembering story that led to this body of work that I call Heartland.
Yay. I'm excited about Heartland.
Which came from my own depletion story about overgiving or just kind of being in a circumstance where I was like, why do I keep depleting? And it was like the last relationship that I was referring to, where a partner had asked my son and I to make a life together. We were dating and things were going really well. I was about to move and thought we should have a conversation before I made a decision about a year-long commitment. And it was like right at the beginning of the pandemic, and we knew the pandemic was happening, and he like had thought about it, and he made this like grand gesture to invite my son and I to live in his house with him. And it really was a grand gesture because he had to do some remodeling to build my son a bedroom, which he did. It was on this feminine masculine path, there are these ideas like masculine provision and feminine receptivity. He and I both were on this entrepreneurial path, and neither of us was rich, but we were
Right.
gung ho. And it was like, well, wouldn't it be beautiful if we were really supporting one another? And you told me a beautiful story about you and your husband on that journey. I had some ideals about supporting one another. And so I said yes to moving in. And it was such a beautiful time for my awakening journey. Like, oh,
I like the way you phrase that because we all know what that means.
like
We all know what that means.
it was so life shaping
Yeah.
that I knew it had to happen. Like
Right.
I knew that it was one of the reasons I incarnated. Like I had always had this hunch that I was supposed to live in this county. And I'd
Uh-huh.
been trying to live in this county for
Oh, that's right.
15
Right.
years. Then I moved to this county and this huge awakening happens.
Right.
This man was so unsuspecting.
So solid.
So I'm having this mystical awakening experience. I'm waking up to this. Oh my gosh, there are these land grids and this feminine current running through the land. I'm having my next phase of sacred remembering awakening,
Right.
just
Right.
like every single day, just living with the land. It was way more. I think his soul actually did sign up for it, but then, he was like, I'm out.
Right. Sure.
And it was in this moment where he'd invited me to make a life together. He had opened his home.
Right.
My family pictures were on the wall beside his family
Right.
pictures.
Right.
We were living there. Like we were
Right.
making this a home. I was putting in a garden. We were talking about chickens. I was
Mhm.
invested. And I was having this really sacred relationship with the land. And he was like, you got to go. I'm done. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, from out of where? Excuse me? I just gave up this cute farmhouse that I had. Like, what? And he's like, I'm out. Figure it out. And his heart turned off, and there was no more of an ideal, like, I want to provide for you and your child, this home. And I was
Devastated.
over it.
Yeah.
Actually, I had already been devastated on my soul
Right.
path. This was like what the hell is going on?
Right. Right.
Like, it was this moment of, this is a theme in my life, and it's like, no more. Why am I investing my feminine resources into people who end up not caring what happens to my son and I?
Right.
And as an entrepreneur, I think I was like a third year entrepreneur at this point. I didn't have a lot of money in the bank. I was like, what do you think I'm going to do? And his answer was, I don't care. Like, I do not care what happens. Which was, it felt like an assault on the feminine. It was like a 180 from what I had experienced of him before that.
Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, what's coming up for me in the context of what we were just talking about with the resources, I'm thinking so that we can create new ways of honoring this. It seems that the appropriate response would have been, I'm out, but don't worry. Let me help to get you the space you need. I don't want to leave you high and dry. I know this was a big deal for you to move your son here. Some level of honoring
Yeah.
that piece, right?
Right.
That's the
Right.
missing piece that would have made it an honorable union or disunion, like
Right.
separation or whatever you want
Right.
to call it.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a whole, like, I could analyze his psychology, my psychology, what got us there, and all of that. I certainly have done that, but I don't need to do it here.
Sure, sure.
One thing that I did do, rather than feeling immediately victimized or like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? A friend of mine, another man who was a friend of his, offered me to sleep on his couch. And I was like, I am a mother and a woman, and a homemaker. I don't sleep on couches.
Right.
Like, come on, men. Where is the honor for the feminine? And so this is what I was experiencing. And
Wow.
so I did put a boundary where I was like, I hear you and I see that you're done and you're going to give me a minute to
Right.
figure out what wants to happen
Right.
here.
Exactly.
And then the story gets rather esoteric from there. So may I share
Yeah.
the bridge into Heartland?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to bring that one up so everybody can
Yeah.
check that out.
Thank you. What happened next was huge and life shifting. It's this thing that I walk with. And I'll just say that I am not at all perfect at it. It was the thing I was given to bring forward to people, but I am still very much on this path myself
Oh,
because we are all walking out of patriarchy right now.
right.
And so the land was very sacred, like I mentioned, and there were like quartz crystals popping, like quartz rocks popping up out of the soil everywhere on
Wow.
the top of this mountain where we're living in Western North Carolina. It's ancestral Cherokee land.
Was this where you were living with this
Yeah,
partner? Oh, okay.
yeah. So
Interesting.
the whole time that I was living there, when I first was dating him, there was this like one day when I'm talking about sacred remembering and kind of my mystical nature, I'll hear things like a clairaudience
Right.
or some,
Sure.
I'll
Yeah.
see things. And so when we were dating, I drove onto the land one day and the spirit, the voice, the clairaudience said, get out, put your feet on the soil and say, I am here.
Mm-hmm.
Those three words, I am here. Like, and the
Right.
here was the earth part.
For sure.
And so I had to announce myself. And then there
Right.
was this way, like I knew early on that I had a relationship with this land.
Right.
And my maternal grandfather had lived on these mountains, and there was Cherokee lineage and
Yeah.
ancestry. My father's lineage is also in these Appalachian mountains
Yeah.
where I live.
Yeah.
And so I had been like during this awakening, there were these quartz pieces and it like lines of the quartz wanted to start to happen. Like I was being shown to directionally place these quartz rocks so that energy could move.
Uh-huh. Right.
And so I was learning more about ley lines and I was like, what are these
Yeah.
energy currents that are going through? It was a 7-acre mountaintop property, but there was also a basin in it.
Uh-huh.
And this man was an ecologist, and he said it was very special when there was a basin at a mountaintop.
Right.
And that's why he had lived there. And on just the other side of this property, on the other side of the mountain, there was a stone quarry that they were trying to use for making asphalt.
Oh, well.
This man was fighting the asphalt plant from a very like scientific perspective and a
Right.
political perspective. And then I was getting all of these feminine downloads about good and evil playing out. There's a fight for good and evil playing out in the earth.
Right.
And I was aware that I was there as a helper,
Right.
to help with this. I was sensing into these lines that wanted to be reestablished.
Yeah.
And I could feel the healing energy from the property we were on was like reaching and over and into the stone quarry and all of the energetics that
Right.
were at play over there. And then two other really significant things were happening was that as I was running women's groups and we were doing journeys and sitting together in sacred journey, I was running those online globally. I was seeing all of this information about how women's bodies and the earth body heal in tandem.
Wow. That's
And
awesome.
yeah, so we were discovering this, and then I was the only place I know to research these things really before finding Z at Earth Star Academy was Lisa Renee and her
Right.
Ascension Glossary.
Exactly.
And so I was like, okay, I think I'm figuring this out. And then I would go and look it up. There was also a portal area on this land. He had a fire pit and some other sacred, like a spot that was sacred to him. And I was like, but your sacred area is actually over there. And it was like this portal to the feminine.
Wow.
And so I would sit in it every day
Right.
and just listen. It was a like fast track of awakening, I'm telling you what.
Wow.
And then it was like, that was what was too much for him. And he was like,
Were you, out of curiosity, like, were you just coming back in deeply connected meditative states kind of thing that was like, and maybe sharing your experience or not sharing your experience or both?
it was like both. And he was up for some things, but not for
Right.
everything. And
Yeah.
I do want to respect like but what I said to him that was kind of too much was like, this also has to do with your sacred relationship to the mother in the earth.
Mhm.
And that was really when he was like, no, like too much.
That was
And
too
that,
much.
I think that's a choice point that men and masculine are at right now. How do you relate to the mother of all life? And that's a big thing to commit to as a soul. I think that is what is advancing some of our men and some of
Right.
our like
Right.
earthly king, earth keepers. And then it's what keeps others more ego attached and anti feminine.
Right.
But as he was, really essentially kicking me off, I went to this portal place and fell to my knees on this marshy, wet land.
Mhm.
I was like, somebody has got to tell me what the hell's going on.
Mhm.
And in that moment, I had this vision. My eyes were closed and on the ground, and these grandmothers,
Mm.
like grandmothers of all life,
Mhm.
like grandmothers who had lived on that land,
Mhm.
Cherokee grandmothers, and then orbs of light grandmothers, star beings, grandmothers from everywhere
Wow.
came forward. And this brings tears to my eyes. They were banging drums and wailing and crying. It was this solidarity of, we understand the depletion of the feminine that you're feeling and the depletion of the feminine that the earth knows.
Wow.
And so they told me that they were going to give me Heartland
Wow.
and they were going to help. They were going to give me Heartland and I would need to share it. In some ways, Margaret,
Mhm.
I feel like I've tried really hard. In some ways, I feel like I've succeeded. In some ways, I feel like I've failed them. And I'm like, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
Like, yes, grandmothers. And this year in particular, I've offered 2 live transmissions of Heartland. Heartland is 8 pieces.
Mm.
I've offered it twice in 8 weeks. We got all the pieces and did the transmissions and the meditations. And then it's like an activation. It's like a quick,
Right.
now you have it. And what really wanted to happen after last year was like a gestation, like an
Right.
8-month
Right.
Heartland.
Right.
And so this year I needed to move again.
Another iteration of the
Another iteration.
grand journey, right?
And it was time for Heartland to come through because I always
Mhm.
offered it in the spring. There's this diamond essence of it. What Heartland is a path to what I say it a few different ways. Like it's a path to healing the depletion of the feminine.
Mhm.
It's a path to the regenerative feminine, like the land of the regenerative feminine. And like what would it look like if patriarchy hadn't ever existed? Like
Right.
this place beyond. And so it's like these codes for transcending this patriarchal culture. And this year, I knew it was coming, but it wouldn't give me the green light to open it. It was like, what in the world? And then that's when I found Z because I personally had some questions about womb sovereignty, which
Mhm.
is something I'd been trying to unlock for a year and a half. And um, so with like after I had said yes to Z and started, in that container, then like I got the Heartland green light
Mhm.
and to do like a full, 8 months. But I
Wow.
keep thinking it's going to be 9 months. I'm like, I know that we're going to be there 9 months, but I don't know why. But it's like a full gestation,
Yeah, I was just
you
gonna say,
know,
for
and
sure.
then we will end up in the spring. Like we'll emerge in the
That's awesome.
springtime. So the grandmothers are, I am in, how when you start something, you go through your own kind of initiation
Yeah.
before everyone comes. It's like
Well,
you
yeah,
prepare for the
exactly.
party.
Yeah, exactly.
And I
Uh,
am definitely in that right now in these gorgeous grandmother initiations
yeah.
with my own ancestral grandmothers, with local grandmothers, like
Mhm. Right,
here
yeah,
on this
I heard you
land.
mentioning that too, I think on one of
Yeah.
the Q&A calls.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, a grandmother just passed me her tobacco pipe to carry. And
That's
I'm
amazing.
still like, what does this all mean? So it's this sacred remembering and
Right,
initiation
yeah,
and continuing to say yes. And
yeah,
very humbled and feeling very much in service
yeah,
to this potential
yeah.
of regenerating the feminine,
Mhm.
which you and I know has so much to do with our earth connection, the ley lines and the energy currents of the earth and the places that we're in.
So let's
So
let's take a second for people that are in the audience that aren't totally
this is new.
aware of
Yeah.
this is actually an awakening. What I have found, and I keep my finger on the pulse of a lot of different things that are kind of happening within women's communities, which is why I was so excited to relaunch within this container of Yin-care, because I had previously offered some of this with under a previous business. But there is this whole awakening of women
Mm.
connecting to the energy grids of the planet. It seems strange if you haven't heard of it before, but wake up and just hear it.
Yeah.
You're going to be hearing about it a lot. I
You're
can.
going to be moving quartz
You're
pieces
gonna,
around.
yeah, you're going to see a lot of weirdos doing a
Yeah.
lot of weird stuff on the
Yeah.
internet. It is a new tribal kind of a tribal behavior in a sense, like this
Mm.
the
Mm.
there's tribal rituals that are happening that are being recreated around these connections. People are being drawn to certain locations to connect with them and do work. By do work, I mean it could mean meditation, it could be moving things, doing energy work that could be equated with Reiki. I was mentioning to Sarah earlier that I had been part of a course where in one of the energy ceremonies, I literally felt like my body was an acupuncture needle on the planet. So it's we have these energy meridian systems within the body, but there is the earth has her living, breathing body as well.
Yeah.
And just like we can have excess and deficiency and stagnation, so can the earth. And so it's about freeing up those areas and
Mm.
allowing for greater flow and removing things that are inhibiting the natural order flow that is divinely
Mm.
ordered for our planet and for all of us, for all of our well being. So
Yeah.
it's pretty exciting. And
Yeah.
so, besides there being a transmission within your course, it looked like it is broken down by sections, right? Like when I went to
Mhm.
the website, I'm going to actually, I think I've got it here. Let me pull it up so everybody can get a sense for what your beautiful page looks like.
So
Um,
sweet.
let's see. There it is. It's so pretty. She's got this lovely page, you guys. I'm going to scroll, look at all your beautiful pictures. I love it.
You're so
Um,
sweet.
okay, you've got it broken down by months. So there's different sections depending on the month, right?
Yes, some of it overlaps because we're setting up the energy, like architecture. We're practicing the meditations and the
Right.
energetics the entire way through.
Right.
So the month by month breakdown is kind of a conceptual breakdown.
Right.
And we'll be meeting the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month for two
Okay.
hours. And so there's just a lot of integration time
Mhm.
between our sessions. We meet at least twice a month. The Sacred Remembering community is held in Mighty Networks,
Oh,
which I just love Mighty Networks so much. And so we'll be using a private group inside of Sacred Remembering to have a social
right.
experience
Right.
the entire way through. All the meditations and the monthly, I call it home play,
Right.
while we're talking about consumption. That's the first kind of code to really examine consumption and how we have the relationship that we do with consumption because we're actually afraid of being consumed. As
Mhm.
women, we're afraid that our feminine resources are going to be consumed, and that
That is
fuels
really interesting.
consume or be consumed. And so, as you're saying, and this is things that we need to start saying, even though they're potentially more uncomfortable, is as we're talking about the energy that got stuck in the earth, not only did it get stuck, but where did all of that feminine energy and patriarchy go? If women were being depleted and our womb energy was being used to create something else, where did it
Right.
go?
Right.
And so, it was rerouted, it was stolen, it was taken, and
Mhm.
it's been hanging out in other places inside the earth, which
Right.
is just fascinating to start to learn and realize. And so it's a reclamation as well as a grid movement,
Right.
as well as
Right.
the
Right.
acupuncture freeing the energy. And so such a long history with this, going back to the child abuse, going back to not being able to have my daughter. It was like this
Right.
fear that something would be taken from me. And so then what do? Like we get on our hamster wheel and we're like, okay,
Right.
I got to strive for these external
Right.
resources. I have to do my best before
Right.
something else is taken from me. It's like we exhaust our internal
Right.
resources on that path. So we need to disassemble these energetics
Mhm.
in our lives and our behaviors and our energies and our layers of consciousness. And that's why we're going slow this time. Just allow that to happen.
That's awesome.
And the energy of like, well, what is Heartland? That's kind of, it's an inquiry that we walk with because people are like, well, I love this place on the earth. Is that my Heartland? And then
Right.
it's like, well, there's this place in my heart. Is that my Heartland?
Right.
And we work with the energetics of inner earth and these like helper frequencies like the aurora frequencies, like the cosmic womb. And so we begin to experience a frequency that our bodies can integrate
Mhm.
and adapt to and become. We say we want to live more in the heartland
Right.
and bridge our feminine system from this depletion patriarchal climate to one of the regenerative feminine. And so this is territory we've not been in before,
Right.
right? Which is why it's an interactive journey. It's not
Right.
just something you can learn and get a certificate in, it's an embodied interactive journey where we can feel a frequency that changes our lives and changes who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. One more thing I would love to address because I think that some people may have only because of overuse of and the woke kind of mentality around divisions, the word patriarchy. It's unfortunate because it has to be a word that we use to communicate a certain type of behavior historically, culturally. What would you say if people are triggered by the
Yeah,
patriarchy? How would you address that?
thanks for that question. Understandable. I'm not quite sure where we are collectively with that because 5 years ago in my TEDx, I decided to say it, and TED almost didn't publish my talk for that reason.
By the way, to her website and check out the TEDx talk. So both of them can go up. Okay.
Recently, I know that I need to go as social research and see the Barbie movie. I guess they say patriarchy in the Barbie movie. And
wow.
so I'm seeing that as an indicator of like a readiness for us to name what it is to name.
Right.
And so patriarchy as it has existed is a system of domination because it's a power system. Like one group, it's an either or. It's like one group has power and another doesn't.
Matriarchy would be a similar thing, right? In a sense, it could be that
so that's
one group
not
had power over the other as well.
Yeah, we need to be careful of the pendulum swing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not like we're opposing patriarchy and so we just want the complete opposite.
Right.
This spiritual path is a path of integration into the heart. It's a path of healing separation within us and coming into union within our hearts, within our energy bodies, within our everything, which is a long process.
Right.
That requires healing our pains and hurts that have happened as a result of a domination system.
Yeah.
Patriarchy, like I was talking in the beginning about the church and God being associated with domination, because it's like, well, men have access to God in most religions, and then women are subservient in that system and have to get the permission from the man in order to hear from God. And our resources are locked into that kind of program too, right? And so everything with the feminine in that system was set up to take the feminine energy and reroute it into a system where it could be used for whatever. And it wasn't like men are the bad guys. It was like, it's something else. It's like a darker force or controller force.
Men have been depleted by the system equally as women. So I think that's kind of what I wanted to be sure we expressed. Just because we use the word patriarchy doesn't mean that this is anti-men.
No.
At all. This is about a structural system within our culture that has supported one way of being that is dominant over all of us in a way that is not supporting union within and without.
So many women and actually feminist movements, and understandably, because we're all just trying to figure it out, right? But it's like the pendulum swings, like, well, if they have power, then I want to take the power back. And it becomes an oppositional thing. Anytime we're in opposition, and we talk about this in Heartland, we're in a bi-wave frequency, we're in an either or, where there's only a ping pong that can happen. Unity is like a triangle, a trinity, where two things in union make a third thing. So the third thing is like the unity thing, which is a little vague, but I think when we hear that, we're like, oh yeah, right. It's not just this either or, male, female, masculine, feminine. It's like, what do they create together? And so that is the energy of the heart as we like traverse this as humans. And so I also want to say that my work, I'm always saying that we need to heal feminine, masculine on all levels. And by saying that, I'm talking about within us, like I have feminine and masculine inside of me. And I need to get right with that inner system of how they're treating one another and how they function most efficiently and highly. Then there's the masculine feminine relationship with others and in dynamics, regardless of gender. It's like, what are the energetics doing relationally? And then there's our relationship with the masculine and feminine, with the divine. And we all have to walk this. As a woman, I have to heal my relationship with what is the masculine essence of God. And what did I learn in the church? Well, that's traumatizing. So we have God trauma, and then we're like missing the mother God altogether, because we're like, well, what? Where's her role? So we have to reconcile and journey on our sacred remembering paths with the masculine feminine on all levels,
Right.
and like a
Yeah.
lot of inquiry. So my work really does span this like very practical,
Yeah.
to this esoteric.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Awesome. That's perfect. That is everything I would want said and more. That is great. I wanted so people can certainly go check out .com/Heartland and sign up for her course. It's going to be amazing. It'll be a great journey over the next 8 to possibly 9 months. We'll see for her as it unfolds. If they have questions, there's a contact page on your website. And then lastly, if they feel like do you do private sessions at all or anything? Okay. And is that on your website also?
It is. It is. I do it differently for men and women because there is an esoteric holism to my work with women that I can touch in a way that I don't with men because I'm not a man.
Sure.
And so with men, it's more like coaching. With women, I have a hybrid because a lot of energetic changes are happening. And so it's not just coaching and it's not just energy
Right.
sessions. It's very much both. And I do 3 sessions over 6 weeks. That's kind of like a package.
Right.
And then if someone wants longer term support, they can continue to purchase that. It's a nice way to go deep into some really gorgeous energy shifts
Right.
and get the support, the talking and
Yeah,
what would be considered
absolutely.
more like coaching. That took years to get to that current energetic of it. I'm very happy with the consciousness and the energy field of what that currently is. There's not even a consultation needed for women who are called to do that at this point, although you can certainly schedule one and ask questions. There's no sales, there's no marketing.
Right.
It's like if
Yeah.
you want
I
it,
would encourage everybody, and I will probably say this on multiple interviews, and that is just that if you're finding that this work is resonating with you, then reach out.
that's sacred
Because
remembering.
that is sacred
Yeah.
remembering. You're having a connection with whatever the content is here. Everybody's got to find their own path, and there are many, many practitioners, many different offerings, whatever. But if you're feeling that connection with Sarah, please go to her website and check it out. And then last piece, I think, here is you said you have something already established on Mighty Networks with your podcast community. Is that open to the public or okay? And how would people find out about that?
That's also linked through sarahpoet.com. That whole body of work around women waking up to the truth of who we are and that pathway is called Sacred Remembering. I do make a podcast. I just restarted it after like an 8-month break, which was awesome. It's all in a new energetic.
Yeah.
And the community has existed since 2021. That just got a whole energetic upgrade. It's feeling very, very beautiful. It always did, but it's
Right.
kind of new template
Right.
now. And so, yes, it is a monthly membership or an annual membership. I definitely encourage women to step in for about 3 months because our data shows that that's when people start to feel more comfortable sharing and really stepping into community.
Right.
And that's where we're weaving a lot of magic. So we have community calls, energy transmissions, and other special events. We have a money healing call, like a prosperity call, once a month. We have 4 to 6 live events per month. And then Mighty Networks is so cool because it's like a positive social media feed. We have our own social media network where you can post anything on your sacred remembering path.
Oh, cool.
I'm particularly interested in helping women bridge the path between remembering who we are and developing our sacred offerings for the world. So, if you know that you are a psychic and you want to begin to give sessions and you need people to practice with,
Right.
what sacred remembering is becoming is a hub for women to step into their sacred work.
Yeah.
Which is
awesome.
so my life's work. Like we need what is inside of women in the world. And so, yeah, anything I can do to support women standing more confidently in that truth and in their sacred gifts,
Yeah.
because there is some wobble in the beginning and then on through, but we need community.
We do, and I love that it's kind of like a private community because it just has it's more sacred, really. It allows us to all relax and reflect.
Yeah.
It's not like on other social media networks.
Right.
It's difficult to share personal information.
When you're having these awakenings, but the people around you aren't, it's
Right.
like,
You
who do you
need it
talk
for
to
those
about
people.
that? Like,
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
that's part of the reason
Yeah.
that we're there. As you watch a friend of yours go through all of this stuff and then develop her website and develop her offerings, you want to send your friends to her. You're like,
Right.
I want you to succeed.
Right. Exactly. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's a
And
whole
then
new way.
do you also have, for those people who are not ready to take that leap, do you do other social media at all?
Like, am I out on
Are
Instagram
you
and
out on
Facebook?
Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that?
I am,
People,
yeah. So that I can try to tell people what's going on in the deeper
yeah, a
spaces.
little bit. So they
Yeah.
can find you there. Do you have links to that on your website as well?
Yeah, there's little
Okay.
icons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. That was
Margaret.
amazing, Sarah. I just wanted to make sure that everybody had all the ways to get in touch with you. We'll go ahead and take those down so everybody can see who we are one more time. Thank you so much for sharing your heart with us, Heartland with us, and your deep inner sacred remembering and awakening within all of us. I'm very grateful. So
Yes, I've been a bit of a hermit. And so this is the first time that I've had this kind of conversation publicly in quite a while. Thank you for having me and
yeah.
hosting so generously. And
Absolutely. My pleasure.
thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on the Yin-care podcast. And just to leave all of you with the little bit that we like to leave with you, which is to honor yourself, celebrate your strength, and empower your transformation. And we will see you next time. Bye. Hey, everyone. Wishing that you enjoyed that interview that I did with Sarah Poet in the fall of 2023, and wanted to give you an update on what Sarah is currently up to, as I was unable to post the interview as I had planned due to some personal family circumstances. I'll definitely be going into those in some of the other podcasts. But in any case, Sarah is not only working on her Heartland book presently, but is also offering monthly regenerative feminine events that are energy transmissions of the Heartland code. So definitely check those out. Take advantage of that. She's offering long-term one-on-one work for deep transformation at the 3, 8, and 12-month timeframes. And of course, the Sacred Remembering podcast and community continues on for continuous sacred community. So head on over to sarahpoet.com and check those out. You can sign up for updates and have a look around her website. Sarah's intuitive knowing is spot on. She's definitely on the cutting edge of both knowing and explaining certain key concepts for women. We did discuss in the interview that you just finished listening to what it means to be resourced. And now all I'm hearing about are women in the spiritual field talking about women being resourced. So she was definitely on to something. And this was well before anyone else was talking about it. So please pay attention to Sarah and let's see what is coming next for Sarah. I'm looking forward to having her back on the Yin-care podcast for sure. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you did like this video, be sure to subscribe, review, and share. I look forward to seeing you next time on the Yin-care podcast.